My name is Ron Dijon. I'm the Executive Director for the Graphic Truth, a coalition to end teen addiction. There is an epidemic of deadly drug and alcohol abuse within our schools, and it's destroying more lives every year, and we're here to stop it. Parents are no longer interested in slogans or theoretical ideas at the expense of their children's lives. And honestly, when it comes to what teenagers do on weekends or with their friends, they just don't listen to authority figures, but they do listen to us. Our program is graphic, factual, and hosted by people who have personally faced addiction and know what they're talking about. The following broadcast will show you how you can help us stop these preventable tragedies. Please stay tuned.
Stop looking at me! This wasn't supposed to be your life!
Welcome to the broadcast. This is The Graphic Truth, and I'm Lich. Penelope Serio is here. Penelope is a mother from Simsbury who lost her son to a drug overdose back in June of 2010 at the summation of his high school graduation party at the family's home in Simsbury. Penelope attended the University of Bridgeport and graduated with a BSN in nursing. She's now the co-owner with Robert, her husband, in their business, Perfect Vision and Sound. Penelope's son, Rob, passed away due to an illegal drug back in June of 2010 at their home during his high school graduation party. The Serio family has established a scholarship fund in Robert's memory at Simsbury High School, and I am joined by Penelope Serio. Welcome and thank you for being here. I appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start by telling me your connection from the day of his birth to June of 2010. Tell me your connection with Rob.
My connection with Rob is that, first of all, he's the first of 3 children that I have. And of those 3 children, probably the most time was spent with Rob. Just the type of personality, the type of young man that he had become was very special to me. Someone who loved to be with his family, had a group of friends, loved to help out, loved to help others, but was very, very sensitive to others' feelings. As a young child, he was always the one who thought of others and was not someone who would speak out or do things that he thought could be hurtful. He continued that mannerism throughout his young life. We spent many, many hours talking, the mother-son conversations that we would have, which, would be times as a child getting off the school bus. There might be something that, was said on the bus that, he found would be hurtful to someone else and wondered why kids would talk to each other that way, why they would say certain things, how they could behave that way. Why didn't they think of how it, could possibly hurt someone's feelings? He was someone who would like to always help others, but yet he wasn't someone who was outspoken about it. He just went about it in a quiet and gentle way. In the high school, I have been told since Rob's death that he was the one who really seemed to speak for the quieter kids. He was the one that in the hallways was the one that, kids always want to be part of a group. They want to fit in. They want to be, when you walk down the hall and everybody's like, hey, how you doing, how you doing? Rob would be the one who would always say hi to those who maybe didn't have that group they belonged to. There were kids who would have come up to us and as parents after and have said that, if they were out in the hallway, they were waiting for a parent to pick them up or something. Rob was always the one that would, hi, how you doing? He was the one who, if there was someone that they were at a place, kids gathering together, and someone kind of, was giving someone a hard time, he was the one that kind of stepped in and said, hey, listen, this is not what you do to each other. This is not, it's not cool. He just wants to get along, he just kind of maybe doesn't see it the same way as you, but, he'd help kids get through that because he felt how they could maybe not fit in or how it could feel to be hurt or not to be part of a group. So he was always there for other people. In the house, he was someone who, again, he wasn't someone who was out on the road all the time, always wanted to be gone. He was the kind of kid who wanted to have his friends at the house, and we loved that because I loved having kids come over. My husband comes from an Italian family. I come from a family that we always wanted our kids to feel like, home was someone you could bring your friends home to. I love to cook. They love to eat. Teenage boys love to eat. So when you cook, they come. So they would,
Cook it and they will come.
And they will come. So they would hang out at our house. And we made that environment welcoming. We wanted them at our house. I wanted to know who his friends were. We wanted to know their families. We got to know their families. They would be downstairs kind of hanging out, and I'd be upstairs listening. And, I just wanted to get to know everyone. He wanted to have kids there. They'd come, they'd skateboard, they'd hang out, they'd longboard, they'd eat, they'd talk, they'd go home. But he loved, enjoyed grilling. He loved being with us. We spent a lot of time as a family always doing things together. He was very close to his brother and his sister. When he was a senior, I started noticing a little more. There was a 5-year difference between he and his younger brother. And I would often hear him, giving him the little cues as to the older brother, giving him advice and saying, hey, don't let somebody talk to you that way. Or don't let somebody do that to you. You got to speak up for yourself. And that's just how he was. And, I have to say I'm very grateful that I was able to be home with my kids. There's families out there who are not able to do that. And that was something that my husband and I had discussed before we were married. That, it was a commitment that we were making, that we wanted to be able to, if both of us weren't able to be there on a full-time basis, one of us was going to be there. We wanted our morals, our ethics to be instilled in our children. We didn't want daycare. We didn't want nannies doing that for us. That was very important.
So family environment.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna try meth just once. I'm gonna smoke this just once. I'm gonna steal just once. I'm going to sleep with him for meth just once.
I'm going to try math just once.
At The Graphic Truth, one of our key programs is conducting live, school-to-school presentations. Our programs include graphic videos, colorful animations, and clinical facts. Yet the key reason in reaching students is because our people understand addiction from the inside. Students trust us and they listen to what we have to say. The first time I looked into the eyes of a mother who had just lost her child, I knew what we had to do, which is why we need your help now. We can no longer look the other way when we have a solution to stop kids from dying. So on behalf of all the parents who will be spared the anguish of losing a child because of your help, thank you. You'll never know how many lives you've truly saved, and the next one could be somebody close to you.
Sum up for me, Rob, in a word, a sentence, and a phrase.
In a word, I'd have to say a sensitive, caring individual.
So sensitive for the word, for the sentence, as well. And in a phrase?
In a phrase, that's difficult. In a phrase, I would have to say someone who touched a lot of lives and left an impression on many.
If it's not too painful, I want you to take me back to the night before you and Robert go to bed. You wake up the next morning. Take me from there.
I would have to say that the morning began with the realization that that phase of raising your first child, successfully seeing them through their primary years of education, successfully completed, probably a pivotal time in our lives where you could say, oh, I'm taking a deep breath, I've made it through that part of his life, and now we're on to the second phase, which was college.
The next stage.
Kind of took that in as I first woke up. It was about 9:10 in the morning, and said, you know, I think I can just take my time this morning. I can get up, kind of casually see what's I've been left with outside. The raccoons hadn't gotten into the after effects of having people over and whatever had, you know, been left behind that they might have gotten into. Went downstairs to just see where everyone was at. I had already, one child was up, one was still in bed, and Rob had gone downstairs to the family area where they often on the weekends would watch a program and fall asleep. And I heard the TV was on, so I knew that, you know, he was down there. I knew that his girlfriend was calling on his phone, which was left in the kitchen, and was waiting because they were going out for breakfast that morning. And it was vibrating because she was trying to reach him, so I said, okay. TV was a little loud that I could hear of, so I said, let me go down, see if he's up yet, see what's happening. And I, you know, ventured down, and sure enough, he was laying on the sofa. And the first thing I had noticed was that he wasn't wrapped up, mummified in his throw blanket that we often have down there on each one of the sofas. And they generally, you know, get themselves all wrapped up and they're sleeping. And I noticed that wasn't the case. And then I went to turn the TV off, and when I turned the TV off, I put the side lamp on because his eyes were just slightly open, like he was just about waking up, or just, you know, kind of like we were, just kind of taking in the day. And in doing that, I turned the light on and touched his forehead, and it was ice cold. And I just knew at that moment that things were not right.
You knew at that moment?
I just did. I just knew, because it just the feel of his skin, the color of his flesh just told me that this wasn't right. And at that moment, I just couldn't get to the phone quick enough. I couldn't get up the stairs quick enough. For some reason, that staircase seemed as though it were 2 miles away. I couldn't catch my breath. I was trying to get to the top of the stairs. I was trying to get to the phone. I was trying to reach my husband to call out his name, to try to get him to help me, to dial the numbers, which I couldn't even seem to see on the phone. I managed to press the numbers, and I just remember just saying that my son is unresponsive. I need someone to come. And they were trying to talk to me, and, you know, and ma'am, you need to stay on the phone. And at the same time, I'm telling my husband to get downstairs. I'm attempting to get downstairs. We're resuscitating him. We're giving him mouth-to-mouth, and I just knew no matter what we were going to do that he was gone. I knew it, no matter the time, the person on the other end trying to tell me what to do based on the fact of my nursing background, what I had seen, what we were doing, the feel of his mouth, the coldness. I just knew he was gone.
And it is, or you tell me, I don't know, I'm not married, I don't have children. It's easy to sit here and say, I empathize, I can understand what you have gone through. Not the case.
Right.
This is your firstborn. This is your firstborn. Parents are not supposed to outlive their children. Other than your husband being by your side, your family being by your side, how did Penelope, as an individual, as a woman, as a mother, how did you move through this? Even though you don't, you carry him every day within you, as you did for 9 months. How do you move through and keep experiencing life as Penelope?
You have to take it a day at a time.
How do you do that?
Initially, it was a minute at a time, an hour at a time, and now it's a day at a time. Initially, I don't think you really, you're in such shock that you are going through the motions, and there's so much organization and planning of what must happen next and what you must do that I don't think you're not really thinking at all. You're just kind of going through the motions of we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. And you do those things and you get through those times. And I think you are emotionless. You have to be.
And did you have the key to unlock that? Or is it something where you've gone through every drawer in the house to find that key? Meaning you've gone through every drawer inside your life to find that key? Or did you have a sense that you had that key to unlock what you needed to move along?
No, you don't have, I don't believe there is a key. I don't believe there's, for every individual, from my experience, it's very different. It's very different for me as a mom, as a woman, as a wife, to experience the loss and to push forward as it would be different for my husband, as a father and a man, to move forward.
Well, there's a difference between paternal and maternal.
I think for me, I just feel that because I do have 2 other children, I don't have a choice. I mean, yes, I have a choice. I could say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to just pack it up. I'm no longer going to live. But then what's going to happen to what's going to happen to the other 2 children? I have to be able to push forward for them. I have to somehow, knowing that this tragedy has touched my family in the way it has, how can something good come out of something so tragic?
If you look in the rearview mirror of your mind at Penelope Serio today, as a mother, would you do anything differently?
I couldn't do anything differently. I absolutely know that.
That's got to be comforting to a degree.
I know.
That you were a great mother.
I am a great mother. That hasn't changed. But the one thing that I probably hold close to my heart is knowing that we were and still are great parents. We've always been involved parents. We've always been loving and caring parents. we have always, I know, provided the best opportunities that we felt our children could have. Did they have everything? No. Should they have everything? No. They had what I think is more important than anything is that love and family that we hold very close to our hearts.
And what's central to who you are? What's central to you now as Penelope? Not as a mother, not as a wife. What's central to who you are that keeps you together?
What's central to me is the love that I have for my family. I couldn't do it if I didn't have that. I wouldn't make it. I know I wouldn't make it. And I know that if I'm here, then I probably say to myself every day, so I must be here for a reason. There's got to be a reason why, I guess that this happened to have happened to my family, so what can I do to push forward?
I'm really tight with my friends. We do everything together. And whatever happens, they look out for me.
Go, go.
I think the most important thing that I've learned is that there is not enough effective information out there that is reaching young people, teenagers and young people specifically. I know from my experience that the important message that I feel compelled to get out to others, and when I say others, I specifically mean teenagers and young adults.
And when you look to the future, with what you just said, when you look to the future with teens and young adults, what do they need? What do they require? How do you see the future unfolding for people who do have an addiction? Now, in your case, your son didn't have one.
No.
It was somebody who was the impetus
Correct.
for what happened. How do you see the future unfolding? What is it that the Graphic Truth and other people in the school system need to do?
They need to embrace programs like what Rhonda John and the Graphic Truth are trying to put forward. And they need to embrace the fact that these are people who are living through addiction. They've made it through addiction. They are people who, they're not educators, they're not teachers, they're not nurses, they're not health directors, they're not law enforcement personnel who are coming to the schools and are saying, listen, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't touch this for this reason. Because you know what, that's just like me sitting down and saying to my children, you really shouldn't do drugs. Well, you know what, I'm supposed to say that. They look at you and say, yeah, Mom, you're supposed to do that. Yeah, the teachers are supposed to say that to us. Someone like Rhonda John and the Graphic Truth are people who can relate to the kids. They've actually been down that road. I know from my own family and from other young kids that have been subject to those programs, whether they be DARE and numerous other types of programs, they're not effective, they're not working. Statistics are showing more and more young people, preteens, junior high kids are dying. And you know what? I have to make a change. I really have to be committed to seeing that through.
And you have to carry that torch.
And I
One
am,
of the people who carries that torch.
Right.
With the 30 seconds we have remaining, have you found some sense of semblance, inner peace, happiness? I know Rob's here. I know he's here. But have you found some sense of a little bit of happiness or inner peace that you can move forward and help the people of the Graphic Truth and help other people who are shackled by drugs and alcohol?
I don't know if I'd call it inner peace. I would call it more of a commitment.
Dedication.
Dedication to seeing that, hopefully from a tragedy that my family has experienced, that somehow my story, my family can somehow make a change in my community, in the state of Connecticut, within the United States.
Right.
Those statistics start to change. I mean, there has to be a way to get that message out there. And I can't think of a better way than someone who's living it every day. I'm living a parent's worst nightmare every day.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming up and opening up your heart and your mind and your life and your story with me. Thank you, Penelope Serio.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Online, it's thegraphictruth.org. Please take some time and go to the site, thegraphictruth.org. For The Graphic Truth, I'm Lich. Thank you for joining us, and keep me in your thoughts.
Hi, I'm Mary Jones with WDRC. Through my previous experience as a school social worker, I have seen firsthand the devastating effects that drugs have on our children. The Graphic Truth is confronting this epidemic that is claiming more lives from our Connecticut schools than at any other time in history. Please consider making a tax-deductible gift to The Graphic Truth, 61 Arrow Road, Suite 27, Wethersfield, Connecticut, 06109. And check out our website, thegraphictruth.org. Thank you very much.
My name is Ron Dijon. I'm the Executive Director for the Graphic Truth, a coalition to end teen addiction. There is an epidemic of deadly drug and alcohol abuse within our schools, and it's destroying more lives every year, and we're here to stop it. Parents are no longer interested in slogans or theoretical ideas at the expense of their children's lives. And honestly, when it comes to what teenagers do on weekends or with their friends, they just don't listen to authority figures. They do listen to us. Our program is graphic, factual, and hosted by people who have personally faced addiction and know what they're talking about. The following broadcast will show you how you can help us stop these preventable tragedies. Please stay tuned.
Stop looking at me! This wasn't supposed to be your life!
Welcome to the broadcast. This is The Graphic Truth, and I'm Lich. Nate Gaines is here. Nate grew up in Newtown and thought he'd never want for anything as an adolescent. He was, quote, rarely disciplined, end quote, when asked about growing up. Nate was 13 years old when he began drinking alcohol. Within 5 years, he was drinking on a regular basis, utilizing illegal drugs and gambling throughout high school. To be accepted by his peers and his colleagues, it was Nate who provided other teens with drugs and alcohol at various parties. Even with his addictions, he got excellent grades in school, held down a job, and had aspirations to attend college. Nate attended the University of Delaware, where he studied business. He continued his binges of drinking, taking, and selling drugs and gambling. Nevertheless, he kept his grades in college right up there. Upon completion of the university, he was employed by a media company, and for the next 5 years, he was still and does remain an addict at that point. At the age of 23, he began therapy, and by 26, he was a member of the fellowship. All because of the 12-step program. He is still on the path of sobriety to this very day, and here to talk to me about his past and life in general, Nate Gaines. Nate, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. You say growing up where and the way you did, how did it shape your personality? What was your childhood like? And when you say that your parents pretty much let you run rampant, talk to me about that.
Well, I grew up in a household with an older brother, 4 years older, and 2 parents. And I learned at a very young age, being the youngest child, the manipulation of lying. So I remember being about 6 or 7 years old and them asking me a question and me just being able to evade the truth. And this rush that came from it, the rush of them not knowing or me not thinking they knew that I was lying to them. And that rush kept coming, you know, and by the time I was getting older and older, I was always a thrill seeker, you know, whether it was stealing candy and eating sugar when no one was around. I always wanted more, and I told these lies and this rush of energy. And then when I became of age, when drugs and alcohol were prevalent, it only made perfect sense that I would go down that route. And through my lying as a child, I learned how to manipulate very well. And I could manipulate situations and really ran my parents rampant. Loving parents just didn't know how to handle me because I was often running down the perils of addiction, and they were mine to hold hostage at the time.
And nobody knew. I mean, you knew how to take somebody's mind and kind of reshape it almost without them even knowing it.
It got to a point where I couldn't even keep my lies straight. I remember being in high school, and I would live so many different lives to so many different people. I'd tell my friends this story, my parents that story, a girlfriend this story, and they would all just be these webs of untruth. And I remember every time that I would get caught or they would keep coming back to me, never underestimate the power of denial. And when I'm actively drinking or drugging back then, I could deny, and through that addiction, you know, really cause a lot of emotional turmoil, not only to myself, but to people around me.
Now, did drugs come to you, or did you go to drugs?
That's an interesting question. Around the same time I placed my first bet gambling, I was with the same person that introduced me to marijuana. And from that first experience, that high that I got, I chased for 12 years. And I was never, ever able to find that chase again. And it was introduced to me, and at the point, I wasn't secure enough in myself, having been through rejection and not feeling like I fit in at a young age, that I opted into the realm of drugs and alcohol because it numbed me up from the head up. It was numbing. I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to worry about being accepted. I could find people who used, and they accepted me because I was using. So it came to me, but it became my best friend very quick.
But you did this and kept up great grades. How did you find that tipping point?
Through therapy years down the road, I realized that it was my self-medication. And what I learned, being a great manipulator at a young age, was that if I kept everything good on the outside, hey, mom and dad, A's and B's, that they wouldn't dig much deeper. I could say my day was fine, I'm going out with friends, A's and B's, you know, and my parents are loving parents, but I think very traditional parents these days, they want to show their neighbors what their kid's doing. They want to brag about their kid's in college and he's got straight A's, and if they're able to hold that perception, then they're okay. And that emotional bond of really knowing what was going on was never established.
What was it that made the biggest impression in your life and turned you around 180 degrees at one point in time in your life when you said to yourself, whoa, I got to put the brakes on here for a moment?
The seed was planted at 18. At 18, I had a friend who committed suicide. He drove to the woods where we always used to drink and drug. He put a heroin needle in his arm. He hung himself from a tree, and he wasn't found till a week later. And at that point, when I got that phone call, it seemed like the world changed. All right, these fun and games, these drinking and drugging and selling drugs, like, it was fun, it was a chase, but at that point, life got a little serious. And never forgetting the pain in his parents' face at the funeral, that really planted a seed with me. But it wasn't until years down the road that I really started to spiral. And it was tough for me because my friends were always able to drink more or do more drugs than I was able to. So I never thought that I had the problem. But then it came to a point where meaningful relationships in my lives with parents, with loved ones, were completely in turmoil. My lies were catching up to me. I was unable to hold down any honest relationship. And at that point, the only thing I knew how to do was ask for help. And that's when I started therapy and started digging into the reasons why I drank and drugged. And, you know, through that process, understood that it was self-esteem and it was emotional and was feeling of acceptance and self-love that I never developed because I was into drugs so early that at that point I saw how good life could be.
So was the one experience in your life, the one experience that struck that deep chord, kind of put the fear in you, was it when your friend stuck the needle in his arm and hung himself? Was that the moment that you said to yourself, I'm pulling the plug, I better change paths and head for a different arena?
I wish it was. That's when I realized where it could go. You know, and for me, to be very honest about that day, I'll never forget the day that really changed my life. I had a girlfriend of 3 years, and she looked at me and she walked out. And she said, you need to get help. And I sat there that night with a fridge full of alcohol, a room full of drugs, and putting a ton of money on games, and I lost everything. And I sat there on my hands and knees. It was the first time I'd ever prayed in my life, as I cried alone in an apartment. And again, on the outside, everyone thinks I'm doing great. I got a job, good grades, and I'm sitting there. I'm saying, I don't remember how I got home last night. Is my car here? And oh my God, I don't know how many more days I can live this life.
I'm gonna try meth just once. I'm gonna smoke this just once. I'm gonna steal just once. I'm going to sleep with him for meth just once.
I'm going to try math just once.
At The Graphic Truth, one of our key programs is conducting live, school-to-school presentations. Our programs include graphic videos, colorful animations, and clinical facts. Yet the key reason in reaching students is because our people understand addiction from the inside. Students trust us and they listen to what we have to say. You know, the first time I looked into the eyes of a mother who had just lost her child, I knew what we had to do, which is why we need your help now. We can no longer look the other way when we have a solution to stop kids from dying. So on behalf of all the parents who will be spared the anguish of losing a child because of your help, thank you. You'll never know how many lives you've truly saved, and the next one could be somebody close to you.
Five most remarkable people that you've met in your life. Friend, family, Rhonda, John from The Graphic Truth. Just five of the most remarkable people you've met in your life.
One would be my therapist, who has been with me through 4 years of hardcore soul searching. And she really showed me that my life was worth living and those dreams that I wanted as a young boy were possible. I think the other 4 would be people that I've met in the fellowship, and this lady, Penelope, who's also part of this program, who shares her strength about losing a child to this disease. And, you know, unfortunately, through my career and the choices I've made, I've been exposed to people who've been through death of children.
Where do you think you would be today if you didn't get into the 12-step program?
Oh, I'm scared to think. I'm scared to think. My life was so routine every day of chasing drinks and drugs, and I was being pulled over by police officers. I was being stopped at work, and I was always able to skate by a little bit.
Because you knew how to manipulate.
But it was coming to an end. I felt it in my soul. I felt that if I kept going down this road, I was going to get what I deserved. And if I had kept going, if I'd gotten what I deserved, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
So then tell me about the 12-step program. How has it altered your life in terms of what it did for you and how it brought out the best in who you are today?
The 12-step program was introduced me first by a therapist, and I laughed. I completely laughed. And
Because?
Because it's talks of a higher power, it's talks of being powerless, and my ego in my mid-20s holding down a job, you're not going to tell me that I'm powerless over anything. It's just not going to happen. But then as the pain got bad enough, and I availed myself to people who'd been through it, and they told me, just get through it. And I remember making a deal with my therapist. I said, listen, I'll go through the 12-step program for a year, and I'm going to come back here and tell you it doesn't work. That was the defiant person that I was. And that process is a way of living for me, you know, because my drinking and drugging was a symptom of how I felt about myself.
How did you feel about yourself?
No self-esteem, you know, very rejected at a young age, didn't really get accepted.
But you had friends and you had people in school who buddied up with you and people liked you. You have a very infectious, charismatic, animated personality since I've met you. And I know that had to come through even more impressionable at a younger age for people.
For me, I drew them close with drugs and alcohol and money. You know, I ran with a crew growing up, and we all played sports. And in middle school and high school, I started to be that first person cut from the team. So all my friends were on the team, and I was rejected. And that feeling of self-esteem and insecurities just lasted for so long. And through this process of therapy and the 12 steps, I realized that I'm able to face those things and to go back and own everything I've done in my life and apologize to people that I've hurt in my life. I'm able to close a chapter of a book and open a brand new page. And
talk to me about your self-esteem now. Well, let's take it in 2 stages. Tell me about your self-esteem and your self-confidence then, and your self-esteem and your self-confidence now.
Self-esteem and self-confidence then was strictly survival mode. It wasn't real. I was a complete egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I walked around because I had a wad full of money and a bunch of drugs, and inside I felt so low about myself. I just didn't like the person I was because I started drinking and drugging so young. I never defined who I was.
So it's almost like you had this tempestuous relationship with yourself.
And it was a daily basis of drinking and drugging to walk out of the house so I could face the world. Because without it, I felt so meaningless. And today, you know, being comfortable in my skin and accepting that the person I am is good enough, and owning my quirks and owning my uniqueness, that there's no better feeling for me, no amount of money, no high, no drunk, that would ever give me the pleasure of being my best friend. It is an absolute gift of the process I've been through.
When I did my research about you, I read that term. And the specificity of that term, I became my best friend. What a great quote. What a great quote. Because I can tell you something. I sit here, I'm not my best friend. So I look at you and think to myself, when I read that, when I was doing my research, I actually did put my notes down, sat back, and you were the impetus for me to say, here's a gentleman who's 28 years old, lived a plethora of lives already, you know, and your quote is, I'm my best friend. And I thought to myself, I'm not my best friend. I learned something from you from just that quote. How did you come up with that?
It's all I had left, Lich. It's all I had left when I ran for myself for so many years. And part of my addiction was I would either depend on people or I would dominate people. I would depend on a significant other or a group of friends to tell me, Nate, you're good enough. Nate, you're cool. Nate, you look good. Nate, you're this. Or I would dominate people and I'd hold them hostage and I would keep them by my side. And when all those people left, at the end of the day, the only thing between me drinking, drugging, and gambling was a conscious decision that I had through 3 years of therapy and the 12-step process. I sat and said, if I'm really gonna make this life livable for myself, I gotta embrace myself.
And while you embrace yourself, what is the guiding passion in your life now?
The guiding passion in my life, it's twofold. First fold is the selfish part. You know, ever since I was a young man, I've dreamt of a family, of a wife and kids and living the good life. And twofold, it's seeing other people come to sobriety. The most touching story I have in my sobriety so far is I spoke in an institution where people are staying for detox. And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from one of the guys who came out of there. And now he's a good friend of mine. So going in and delivering this message of you know, I drank and drugged for these reasons, but you don't have to live like that anymore, because I don't have to live like that anymore. And I'm not that unique. I'm not almighty and powerful. I can't do this myself.
What's your self-image of yourself?
It's becoming a man. It's really becoming a man. And some days are tough, you know, but some days are great because I don't have to lie anymore. I don't have to run and gun and put on this show to people and act like I need their acceptance. I can just go about my day and be put in situations to help people and continue and grow.
I'm really tight with my friends. We do everything together. And whatever happens, they look out for me.
Go, go.
If you had to look into your mind's eyes and say to yourself, this was the one defining moment where I feel I was free, I was at peace with myself, it would be what?
Through the 12-step process, there's a point where you go back to the past and you apologize to people.
And forgive me for interrupting, but I want to interject one thing. Here's Nate Gaines saying to his therapist, this is not going to work. I'll be back in a year, and I'll tell you, it didn't affect me. Now, pick up from where you just left off and continue.
I reached out to people in my past that I had lied to, stolen from, cheated on, and I was making an apology for my actions. And the look in everybody's eye was a smile and a glee that said, Nate, look at what you're doing with your life. We forgive you. We wish you nothing but the best. And it was like, I just told you I caused so much damage. And they sat there and did nothing but wished me well. And at that point, my mindset and my heart just flipped, and I got hope, and I felt like I wasn't damaged anymore, and I wasn't this bad person. I just made some bad choices.
And certainly there is a reservoir of things that got you through to the other side. But if you had to put your finger on one thing that really pulled you through in that 12-step program, when was it and what was it?
I think it was desperation. You know, the first couple weeks of the 12-step program in my life, I was reaching out to my therapist on a daily basis, and God bless her soul, because she put up with me. And she said, just keep going and find men who've been where you've been. And I sat there and I remember starting the 12-step process and my ego told me, I looked around, these guys are all old, they all don't have jobs, they're all not my age, I'm too young for this, I got too good of a job for this. But then slowly I started listening to what they said, and there were 60 and 70-year-old men talking about feelings of insecurity. And it started to resonate with me that these feelings are just part of being human. And because I never developed a coping mechanism, the only way I knew how to deal with those feelings was to escape them.
What ought all of us learn from your experiences?
No matter how much the pain resonates deep, there's always a better way of life. But I gotta tell you, it's the hardest thing to come to grips to do, to give up the old friends, to give up the old habits. But if there's a change, if there's a desire to change somewhere, and it continues to blossom. You know, I think there's a lot of people who want to change small things about their lives, and at times they do, and they dedicate to them, and then they fall off. But for someone who drinks and drugs, when that change is, I don't want to live like this anymore, that you can do it. You can absolutely do it regardless of circumstances or anywhere that you're at in your life. If the desire is there, it's possible.
If they want it, if they have the desire, what's the most difficult hurdle to overcome?
I deal with this on a regular basis. I have friends from high school who continue to call me and reach out to me, and they're still active. They're calling me crying. They're calling me with a bottle of booze and pills, thinking that they're going to take the pain away. These guys are calling me, telling me they don't want to live anymore. And I sit and I say to them, you know, what do you want to do for your life? And they say, well, I just got to move, or I just need a new job, or I just need to find a relationship. So they're focused on all the outside things. When for me, in my experience, this is an inside job. This isn't, nothing outside of me can help me feel better. I got to go dig.
Yeah, it's almost like when people say, I'm looking for happiness, I'm trying to find happiness. It's not out there, it's in here. And that's the hardest thing to do, though, is find that happiness within. It really is the hardest thing to do.
It is, and only through so many failed attempts externally. There was no amount of money, there was no relationship, there was no car, there was no job, there was no muscle at the gym, there was nothing I could get to fill that void. Because I would get there and I would still feel that emptiness until I had the desperation to give it a shot and go within.
3 pivotal moments in your life, 3 crossroads that were most pivotal were what?
The first would be witnessing the death at the age of 18. I think the second would be when it really hit me personally and my life crumbled. The people I loved left me, and all I had left was myself. And I think the third would probably be the last 6 to 12 months of my life, where if you had told me what my life would be if I didn't drink or drug, and I could pick that, I'm glad I didn't have the choice to pick that, because my life today, just on a daily basis, couldn't be any better. And the joy and happiness that I get, just not having to go down that road of addiction, and it just grows every day because I become more of a man and more of a person who loves himself, and I never thought it possible without a substance.
That's so interesting you say that. We have 2 Nates that I've been talking to. And I want you to be honest with me. What do you like about yourself and what do you dislike about yourself?
What do I like about myself? I like my honesty. I like my introspectiveness. I like my ability to know when I'm acting a certain way, when I'm acting out of lust, when I'm acting out of selfishness, when I'm chasing. What I don't like about myself is just because I don't drink or drug doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of character things to work on, you know, whether it be manipulating or selfishness.
To bring everything in summation,
Yeah.
through all you've been through, where are you now in your life, and where do you see your life going?
Where I'm at now in my life, I'm free of chains. I'm free of chains. I'm a single guy, 28, with a career. I can get up and do whatever life brings my way. And the power of being an example and having people in my life who were coming along the sobriety path and people who are ahead of me. We're such a good support group. We still have fun. We still do the same things that guys do who are in a bar. We just do it sober.
I have to tell you, what I said before, I don't say things I don't mean. I don't use empty words, and I don't fill people with false hope. What I said before, I meant. You're a terrific guy. You're got an animated, infectious, charismatic personality, and I'm glad you crossed over that chasm, that abyss, and you got to the other side. Nate Gaines.
Lich, thank you.
Pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
This has been great talking with you. Just truly great, and I wish you a tremendous amount of all the success you want and then some.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Once again, when you're online, it's thegraphictruth.org. Thegraphictruth.org. Please take a look. For The Graphic Truth, I'm Lich. Keep me in your thoughts.
Hi, I'm Mary Jones with WDRC. Through my previous experience as a school social worker, I have seen firsthand the devastating effects that drugs have on our children. The Graphic Truth is confronting this epidemic that is claiming more lives from our Connecticut schools than at any other time in history. Please consider making a tax-deductible gift to The Graphic Truth, 61 Arrow Road, Suite 27, Wethersfield, Connecticut, 06109. And check out our website, thegraphictruth.org. Thank you very much.